1. When I was 25, there was a short time I was staying at my aunt's. It was her, my 2 cousins, and I. She lives in a nice apartment complex, and her unit is on the lower level. Her living room had a lot of windows that she keeps open for fresh air and for her cats to people watch. Her unit happens to be on the corner near a grassy courtyard path. When I had first moved in, I noticed a man who gave me an off vibe. My cousins and aunt said he lived upstairs and 2 units over, recovering from hard drugs that permanently messed him up. His parents paid for him to stay there as they didn't want him with them. They also said other than hearing him mumble and say weird things, no one had ever had an issue. My aunt works nights and leaves at 3 a.m. My younger cousin works nights and leaves at 2 a.m. That usually left my same-aged cousin and I the only 2 there until we leave for work around 8. For context, it is a very open living room to dining room plan. My aunt always has people staying over, so she has a second couch in the dining room in place of a table. This was where I slept. She stayed on the one in the living room. My aunt has also never been one to lock her doors until this incident. One night I'm on my phone trying to sleep at about 1 a.m. and hear a man yelling. He's yelling, "Don't shoot!" and banging on the door to the right of ours. 2 male college students lived there and just told him he had the wrong apartment and to leave. He says sorry and walks off. I am looking through the kitchen window, which is in direct line of sight from my couch bed, and it's the weird neighbor who sees me and grins. He then walks back to his home. I was unsettled, but not enough to wake anyone else up over it. Told my family nonchalantly the next day in a, that was weird way. My cousin and I watch a movie and head off to bed. I have a very hard time staying asleep. But I woke up this time to the feeling of someone watching me. I check my phone and it's around 3:30 a.m. So I know it's not my aunt or cousin. I sit up and figure I'll go watch TV on my aunt's couch since she was gone already. The feeling gets stronger as I'm in the living room. Then I see the shadow of a person standing still in the grass courtyard looking in. I froze. I immediately go back to my couch to get my phone. As I do, the person is gone. I am now trying to calm myself down and think of waking my cousin up, when I hear the creepy man's voice. He is now at the kitchen window, which looks out directly in front of her front door. I drop to the floor out of his line of sight and start frantically trying to call my cousin. The man is now saying things at the window and front door like, "I'm not going to hurt you," and "I'm unarmed," over and over again. His face is up against the window. Then he starts talking about wanting to pet the cats he saw through the window. I can't get hold of my cousin. It's been 20 minutes of this at this point. In this completely clown shit situation, I didn't have many options. I could jump up and run for a knife, but I'd need to go to the kitchen. I could try to respond and ask him to leave, but I've learned when you underestimate crazy, you lose every time. I now hear him knocking and knocking while repeating his nonsense. I'm doing that ridiculous-looking army crawl snake slither across the floor down the hall now. I see the door handle start to turn. I'm about to jump up when my cousin bursts out of his room directly across from the front door. Now, he's not the biggest guy, but boy was he intimidatingly mad at the circus show taking place at his front door. He starts yelling at the guy that he needs to get the fuck off his porch and that he's calling the cops. The man tries to say, "I'm unarmed. I'm not going to hurt you, don't be afraid." My cousin goes off and yells, "That's fucking dandy, it's 4 a.m, you need to leave or I'll call the cops. WTF is wrong with you?" So the guy backs up with his hands in the air and leaves. Needless to say, we didn't go back to sleep. My aunt was called, who called the apartment manager. The next day when I came home from work, his parents were there packing moving boxes in a truck from his place. Maybe he was trying to get me to open the door by seeming friendly. Maybe he had a bad trip and wanted to pet a cat to feel better. We will never know. 2. I live in a rural area in the north of the UK. About 20 minutes outside of the village I live in is a large complex of abandoned buildings. I haven't ever been able to get a straight answer on what these used to be. Some say an old farm, others say it was an RAF, UK Air Force base. Either way, it is a cool place to explore, and any kid's dream. I'm older now, 18, male, but I practically grew up here, spending many summers at this place with my group of mates. We're all older now, so we don't go anymore. I mentioned how many times I've been to demonstrate how comfortable I am with this place. Any creepy feelings usually associated with abandoned buildings have worn off, because of how many times I've been here. I should also mention that in my time visiting this place with my friends, we have never seen anyone else there. It was kind of like our place. Tonight I was chilling with a mate at my house. We were both going to separate universities in a few weeks, so we were feeling quite reflective and started talking about our childhoods, and in particular our many trips to these abandoned buildings. Eventually, although it was late, curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to hop in his car and drive the short journey to this place. When we got there, it was pitch black and we had absolutely no gear except the torches on our phones. He had even came straight from work, so was in his formal suit. We arrived at the place and began walking around, looking at all the buildings and recounting stories of all the summers we had spent here. We were talking carelessly and loudly. In hindsight, this was probably a mistake. We were quite deep in the complex when it started, and loud tapping, the sound of metal on metal. It startled us and we both jumped. In an effort to calm ourselves down, we told each other it was probably the wind. It didn't take us long to work out that this couldn't be the case. The tapping has a rhythm to it, but it was one that would keep on changing. A few times it would even have a recognizable tune such as Queen, We Will Rock You. At this time, me and my mate were terrified. We started to slowly, as quietly as possible, go back the way we had come towards where his car was parked. We had only made it a few meters when I accidentally stepped on a bit of MDF board lying on the floor. It snapped with what felt like the loudest sound in the world. At this point, the tapping abruptly stopped and everything went silent. We started to creep away again. We had only made it a bit further when something I will never forget, but wish I could, happened. We heard a voice. It sounded mad. It was loud and clear enough, a man's voice, and it was speaking English, but what it was saying didn't make sense. Just a random jumble of words and phrases blurted out without any pause. At this point, we both broke. We sprinted towards the way out, suppressing the urge to scream like kids. As we were running to the entrance, we ran past another building. As we ran past quite loudly this time, we heard another voice. It was a man's voice again, but definitely different from the first one. This was saying a similar assortment of nothing, but we didn't stop to listen. We sprinted full tilt till we got to his car, hurled ourselves in, and screeched off. We got back to mine and practically hugged each other for the rest of the night. It might not sound that creepy now, but something about these voices coming from the abandoned buildings put fear in the animal part of my brain. 3. This happened last weekend. My estate is still pretty much entirely shut down due to COVID. I'm working as an administrative assistant for an organization. I've been working here since I was 16, 18 now. The office where I work is almost completely empty all the time, and it's really eerie from how it was pre-pandemic. The building shares a lobby with a hotel that has little restaurants, shops, art galleries, etc. Pre-COVID, it was a really lively, happening place all around the clock. Now, most of the people in the offices are working from home, and the shops, for the most part, have either gone out of business or are closed. There is still one open coffee shop, but that's about it. So I usually work from home, but I needed the office space this time for things I had to get done. So I went into the office around noon, and it's like a freaking ghost town. Nobody else seems to be in this huge building, and the only sound is the normal lobby music, echoing throughout the empty, lifeless building. I get in the elevator and go up to my office and begin work. However, I start to get this off feeling of not being alone in the office, and I get really creeped out. I check around the office and find nothing, and I go back to work. So it's around noon, and I hear footsteps in the hallway. Because of the new COVID rules, we have to sign in and out of the office in order to do contact tracing. I go into the front office and see if anyone signed in after me, and no one has. I tell myself I'm just being paranoid and get back to work. So I'm focused on my task again, and I hear a door softly shut. My heart starts beating really heavy, and I go back to the front office. No one else is signed in. I decide it's just best for me to leave right then and there, and maybe call my boss and ask him to come back with me to collect my stuff later. So I go down to the lobby, which is still eerie and empty, and I call my boss and ask him what to do because I left my work laptop in there. My boss tells me to do whatever is safest for me, and if there is a security guard on duty, to go find them and ask them to walk me out of the lobby to my car and alert them of the issue. So I go to the security desk, and the guard there tells me he's been there all morning, and he has only seen me and one other person go in the elevators that day, but he didn't know what floor they got off on. I stay there with him for a while, and he sees a person get on the elevator at a floor below mine and leave. He tells me he thinks the noises I heard were probably just an echo from that person on the floor below me. But if I want, he'll go to the office with me. I tell him that's fine, I'm good. Fragile masculinity over here. And I go back up to my office to begin work. I'm working and I again hear footsteps. I look down the hallway, but no one is there. I decide it's not worth it for me to stay there, that I'm too freaked out, and I grab my stuff and head out the door into the elevators. It feels like an eternity waiting for the elevator to get to me. I feel like someone is watching me again, and I turn to look towards the office entrance. The next thing that happened freaked me out so badly I couldn't comprehend it. Lo and behold, a very tiny woman, like maybe 5'2"-ish, who I didn't recognize, and doesn't work for the company, is peeking through the glass of the office door, and she is totally naked. She makes eye contact with me and then runs back towards the back office until she is out of view. I'm stunned. It's literally the weirdest thing I've seen in my life. I jump in the elevator and press the lobby button, and the shut door button as fast as I can. I go to the security guard and tell him what happened. He says it's impossible that anyone was in there with me, because they keep a log of people leaving and entering which floors and times. No one else has entered my floor in 3 days except for my boss. I call my boss and tell him what happened, and he is sufficiently weirded out. Anyways, he, another coworker, and I decided to check out the office the next day together, and find that someone had taken all the office snacks in the break room. We find in our relaxation office for when people are having a bad day and need a place to relax, a pair of socks, and a brush with hair and dried flakes of blood on it, and a grocery bag filled with receipts, coins, and other random junk like thumbtacks, rocks, a small dollar store plushie, and used Q-tips with earwax. But we find no one in the office. So, strange woman hiding in the office? Let's not meet. I honestly thought I'd imagined it until we went back. My boss also told me he went back to security and demanded they tell the manager and the cleaning staff what happened, and security seemed like they didn't care. So he waited for the cleaning staff, and they told him that they'd been finding long strands of light brown hair in clumps in the shared bathroom downstairs. I don't know why she was naked, but I'm assuming because it was really hot outside, but the building is air-conditioned. Either way, it freaked me out. We do have a locker room with a shower, but I don't even think the shower works. No one ever uses it. It's there for, like, storage. 4. I worked the night shift, 11 to 7 a.m. last night, and it was one of the scariest things I've gone through. I ended up making keys for everyone in-house as if power was out. I wouldn't be able to use the card machine. I was watching the weather updates as I ran through my shift in under an hour to make sure we all had reports and everything done. The storm made landfall and was predicted that we would be hit in the next 20 to 30 minutes. I had 3 back-to-back calls asking if we had rooms, which, as you can guess, we did not. I was waiting for it, but was not ready to be as panicked as I was for the power to cut off. And on, then off again. The panel next to the desk was going off, our backup server was freaking out. I got everything silenced and shut down and locked my doors, and sat with my lanterns on for a little bit. I didn't lock the doors yet, as it wasn't super bad yet, and people still were coming in and out to smoke. When this man walks in with food from a 24-hour diner across the street, I still worry about those people having to work until the very start of this storm, 'cause that's crazy. The wind picked up and was howling. It sounded like ghost effects you'd hear from an old scary movie, but amplified. There were floodlights on for about an hour. In that hour, we had people coming downstairs to go outside, and I told them to stay in, but they didn't listen. The sliding door got blown open from the wind, and I immediately closed up the doors, locked and sealed us in. My co-worker, who couldn't sleep, stayed with me at the front desk, talking and just keeping our minds off of the storm, when we go check on the rest of the hotel, which was completely dark, except for the red exit signs at the end of the hall. We had some lanterns for light, and walked to the side doors near our stairs. They had gutter water gushing in from the poorly sealed door on the right of our hotel. The carpet was soaked through and the water kept coming. That's when we heard a loud thud from above us. We ran up the stairs and found a tile from the roof on the second floor had fallen, and the water was coming from the ceiling. Our maintenance man anticipated it and put up a trash can, but that water was coming down. I patrolled the second floor, making sure no one's fire alarms were going off. Our carpets were soaked from water coming from leaks in the roof. My co-worker went to her room to go use the bathroom before going back downstairs. I stupidly made the decision to go up to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor has been out of order for almost a year for renovations, and it has been completely deconstructed for some time now. First, there was the sound of fire alarms going off, which was coupled with the howling wind. I was shaking, but I ended up walking about 3 feet into the hallway, making sure there wasn't water coming in from anywhere. The only lighting I had was my lantern, and the dim lightning strikes from the window. There were razor blades and tools all over the floor, tarps and carpeting everywhere. I panicked, feeling my heart racing way too fast. I got back down to the 2nd floor out of breath. My co-worker was waiting for me, mad that I had left her. We then went to the lobby, where we found 3 frogs chilling in the front of the doors. We let them stay, as I would feel bad kicking them out in that bad weather. Our phones were constantly going off for flood and tornado warnings, which scared me the most. With the night being pitch black, there was no way of seeing a tornado coming. The wind whistling and howling throughout the night just had me shaking. We went outside a few times to look to see the trees all going back and forth. We also were watching the sky for any sign of anything. But, like stated, it was so dark. The power stayed out until 8 a.m., which was only because we had a power company in-house, who were quick to go out when the sun came up. Overall, our story was more tame, as our neighbors more west got the worst of the storm. My area got some wind damage, but the flooding wasn't too bad in my neighborhood. I feel bad for the few places that have their roofs lifted off their homes, and the flooding, and I am really praying for all those affected by this. Thanks for listening to my tale of Hurricane Laura. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 4 True Scary Stories. Been a while since I did one of these. Simply the video was not long enough, so I decided to do 4 instead of the usual 3. Should hopefully be back to the regular 3 next week, but again, it's what's available. We make do with what we can find. Right, when's this go up? Let me think. This will be for Monday, is it? What date? Monday. No, it is not Monday. It's for Wednesday, the 2nd of September. Okay, that's fine. I was also glad of the opportunity that I was able to include a non-person scary story in here sometimes. I do like the opportunity to add a bit more variety in there than just, the usual creepy creepers and that sort of thing. Okay, I've been recording quite a bit for the past 2 days, so I'm going to wrap things up here and go and get the rest of the videos made. And I'll possibly eat pizza at some point in between, because I think that should be about ready by now. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.